Hey, welcome to Northumberland Zoo on YouTube. My name is Maxine and I work here. And in today's video, I'm going to be showing you our brand new exhibit, the naked mole rats. And we're going to be telling you all about them because these guys are truly fascinating. We've got quite a complex little tunnel set up here, and this is to try and replicate what they would actually live in the wild, and that is underground system of chambers and tunnels and areas. So in here they have collected all of the bedding, and you can see they're using that toilet paper now and they're trying to drag it through and actually add more bedding to their already massive bed. We've got some bits of willow in here that we've used for enrichment that they can kind of like work through, and it kind of looks like roots underground. Apart from the bedroom, we've also got these other chambers here, and the only other chamber that actually has like a proper real purpose is this one here, which so happens to be, they've chosen this, but furthest away from the bed. And this one is the toilet. So this is the stinky area. So they're all very good at coming over here, doing their business. Even though that they do their business in here, they actually have a very, very particular thing that they do after they've had a wee, which is to trample in it and then like spread it around the tunnels. Naked mole rats have a very, very poor sense of sight and obviously a poor sense of sound, hearing as well. So they use their sense of smell as their kind of way to get around. So by tracking their wee and their poo and stuff through the tunnels and through the boxes, they're kind of almost like building a roadmap so they can smell where they need to be. One of the things that we have to do is occasionally just kind of like clean out those tubes ever so slightly. We don't want to clean them out entirely because then they get lost and they get really upset when it doesn't smell like them, and they're like, oh no, I'm in a strange place. So we just ever so slightly gently clean stuff with water just so it doesn't get too bad. Although they do have eyes, they're very, very, very tiny. They can see like light or dark. They actually live underground in western parts of Africa, and they spend their entire life underground. The only time that they might pop up is if they're like pushing dirt up out of the ground, kind of like a mole. And one of their main predators in the wild is birds of prey. So in that situation, when they actually come out of the ground, they might get nabbed by a bird of prey. But other than that, they stay underground their whole lives. Their only other main predator is snakes. So snakes can actually get down into their tunnels and obviously kind of track them along. At the zoo, these guys are super, super active. They're always doing stuff, and they are a eusocial colony. So these guys are very much like honeybees and our leafcut rats that we already have at the zoo. So there is a queen in this colony. She is the largest of all the mole rats. And when a queen is actually kind of chosen to be the queen, she actually gets bigger. So she kind of like extends a little bit, and her backbone kind of extends and her rib cage extends out, allowing her to have offspring. So when we actually received this colony a few weeks ago, our queen was pregnant. We were given an estimated window of like 2 to 3 weeks for her to give birth, but actually she gave birth after just 1 week. We were all really kind of nervous about it because obviously she had just moved house. It probably would have been quite stressful. We certainly weren't expecting a positive outcome, but here we are almost 2 weeks later, and we have got at least 7 babies that we've seen so far. And the thing about queens is every single litter she has gets bigger than the last. So if she had 7 this time, how many is she gonna have next time? She just becomes this kind of huge baby machine. So the other females that are in the colony, they generally are non-breeding unless they actually decide that they want to challenge her and kind of fight over that. And that's something that we obviously need to kind of oversee and control, but at the moment there's no other females that are big enough to challenge her. Then we also have a dominant male, kind of like a king. He is the biggest male, and he's the only one that gets to breed with her. His main duty is like safety and security, keeping an eye on the place, and he's also responsible for kind of like expanding the underground burrow. He seems to be the one at the forefront of trying to destroy our beautiful concrete boxes, which is fine because that's a natural behavior for them. So we've actually got backup boxes on backup ready for kind of replacing these boxes because they will destroy them. So his main goal is to try and make this burrow bigger and obviously be able to contain more offspring. Our colony is just over 20 individuals, which is a lot of mole rats, but they're very small. Like, people think they're quite big, they're about this big. So they're not huge, so you can contain them in setups like this. So just like other colonies like leafcutter ants and honeybees, the workers all have jobs. So they're responsible for security, for digging, for keeping all of the trails clean. So you see a lot of the younger ones just going around trying to clean the tunnels out. So this is a really great enrichment for them, is just literally just messing with their underground burrows. So obviously if you block up these tunnels, it actually keeps them really busy trying to sort them out. So we've got our dominant male is pulling from that side, and then over here you've got this other little guy pulling from this way, trying to clear this obstruction from their tunnels. Because in the wild, what would normally happen is potentially the ground might collapse in, they might actually lose some of their tunnels. So we want to try and replicate these behaviors, but it also keeps them busy, because the last thing we want is them actually trying to destroy the house where they live. They have ears, but they kind of look like Shrek ears. And I've looked at them on the camera and I can't see a hole. So it's really weird. Obviously over time, they've kind of lost the ability or need to use their eyes and ears. Along their body, although they are hairless, along their body, they've got these little hairs, and they use that to kind of sense their environment and feel around them. So they don't really need their eyes and their ears. So you can kind of see how evolution has kind of slowly started to get rid of these over time. The other thing that's really unusual about them is the fact that they also don't have like a subcutaneous kind of like fat layer on their skin. So like, for example, I happened to catch the female giving birth a couple of weeks ago, which blew my mind. But like what caught my eye was the fact that she was sat there and I could like see through her. The way that she was sat, she tightened her skin so much. I was like, oh my goodness me. So you can actually kind of see through them. And when she was pregnant, you could kind of see movement and see like make out things in her body, which is weird. And what that means is that this is like the only mammal that's ectothermic. Now, what does ectothermic mean? When we eat food, we go through the process of digesting food and generating heat, and that's what keeps us warm. Now, these guys don't do that. These are ectotherms, just like reptiles. So they're actually kind of like cold-blooded mammals, which is like, that's the only species in the world that's like that. That means that their body matches the outside temperature of where they are around them. And in the wild, you'll have seen it on documentaries as well. They obviously conserve their heat a little bit better by going into the nest box and piling up on top of each other as a massive pile of like sacks of rat. And that's how they kind of conserve their heat on the nighttime, because in Africa it can get quite cold. So in this room, we're keeping it at like 25 to 27 degrees because we need to keep them warm. You can keep them cooler, but they slow down. But these are also the longest lived rodent species in the world, of any species. So they can actually live up to like 35 years old, and scientists around the world are keeping them in labs to try and understand how on earth they manage to survive that long. And scientists believe that this is actually due to the fact of the environment where they live. So the environment where they live is totally different to where we live. I know it sounds weird, but living underground, there is a distinct lack of oxygen. So they live in oxygen concentrations that are around 5%. We live in the environment where it's around 20%. So they're living at an oxygen level that's a quarter of what we have to deal with. Now, if we have to go into an environment where there's very, very low oxygen levels, or say, for example, when you're exercising and you can't, when you can't breathe quick enough, you start to get cramp and you get lactic acid buildup in your skin. Now, over time, naked mole rats have kind of almost developed a defense to this, and they don't actually feel any pain receptors in the skin or anything like that, and they don't get that lactic acid buildup like at all. So that means that they can happily live at 5% oxygen. They're kind of almost working at a much slower rate. Because they're not processing stuff as quickly as what we would. So for example, their heart rate compared to like a rodent of equivalent size is like half. So these guys are on like 250 beats per minute, which is still a lot, whereas a rat is like 450. So it is comparably a lot slower. So the other thing that's really interesting about them is that they don't actually develop cancer. And scientists have kind of linked this to this really complex sugar that's in their cells, but they've got like 6 times the mass or the concentration that we have in our cells. And this kind of sugar, it stops cells from clumping together and forming tumors. And scientists have tested this in labs because they've actually removed some of this hyaluronan from their system, and then they actually develop tumors. So obviously scientists are trying to understand how they can learn from this and help try and prevent cancer in humans. Now let's have a little look at their teeth. Their teeth are actually on the outside of their face, which looks weird and slightly scary, but that is for a very, very specific reason, and that's so that they can continue to dig and excavate through burrows without intaking loads of stuff into their mouth. So when you actually look down their mouth, you can see they got a lot of cheek action going on, and that's helping to kind of close the hole to their mouth so that when they're digging and chewing through their tunnels, they're not inhaling loads of dirt and stuff like that. So those teeth are very, very unusual. Obviously, like every single rodent, they consistently grow through life and they have to keep gnawing on things to keep them trimmed down. But they also move independently of each other. So the two at the top and the two at the bottom are actually completely separately hinged, which is kind of unnerving when you see it for the first time. But these guys' main function is to dig massive burrows. In the wild, they've been known to dig burrow systems of up to like 5 kilometers, which is insane. So obviously in captivity, we need to manage that and give them stuff to chew on so that they wear their teeth down. But also you can actually integrate boxes, and that's something that we're working on right now. Integrate boxes where they can actually kind of like excavate their own little burrows in a controlled manner. They are so, so strong. And their main diet in the wild is tubers, so they would normally be excavating through tunnels and find the roots of kind of large kind of vegetables and tubers that are underground and eat at them for, you know, several days or weeks and bring bits and pieces back to the nest. So that's kind of what their aim is, to try and keep expanding and obviously find food through the burrows. Mole rats' physiology is mind-blowing because they can actually run as fast backwards as they can forwards, and that's purely for a defense mechanism. So if a snake actually came down into their tunnels, they would be able to get away backwards very, very quickly. In every colony, there's also like dispersed lists that are born, and that's an individual that's actually grown and it's actually developed like a little bit more fat underneath its skin. And that one is only got one role, and that is to leave the colony and try and find another mole rat somewhere else that's also left a colony to start a new colony and spread the genetics and pass on the genes from this colony. So they don't tend to do anything. They tend to kind of be an outlier, hang out on the outskirts of the colony, and they have that extra kind of fat reserve so that they can actually last longer and go further and have a lot more energy to keep going to find someone else. So they are also physiologically different, which is just mind-blowing. So these rats are not nocturnal, they're not diurnal, they're not crepuscular. They don't actually have like a set kind of like up and down routine. They actually follow what's called a circadian rhythm, which is a routine that repeats every 24 hours. It's in tune with the earth spinning, because underground they don't really know when it's light, when it's dark, or anything like that. So they just kind of do the same things over, repeat and repeat and repeat within a 24-hour period. So they'll just take loads of mini naps, they'll go up and they'll be running around searching for food multiple times a day throughout a 24-hour period. But we've just been blown away by them. They're a super, super cool species to have. There's not very many zoos in the UK that have them on display. And obviously if you come along to the zoo, you can see them on display now. And obviously spot all the different sizes and see if you can spot the queen and the king as well. But I really, really hope you enjoyed learning more about the naked mole rats. If you haven't done already, please do remember to like this video and subscribe to the Northumberland Zoo YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.